Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I thought, was I going to open with a song this morning? Am I going to sing for you? Not that I can sing. But yeah, I was, I don't know, I'm in good spirit. And yes, yesterday was quite a toughie. If you were here, thank you very much. We celebrated our 30th episode. And I think I overcommitted to myself to do all these technology things all at once, and then at some point the Wi-Fi gave in and it was just like a mission. But hey, that's how it goes. That's how we learn. That's live shows for you, and that's why I enjoy it. It keeps me on my toes. I know what works, what doesn't work. I'm not afraid to experiment, and that's what it's all about. So yeah, good morning. Welcome back to the show this morning. Today we're going to talk about F&A systems, and not the system so much, more the planning tool side of it. Like, what are the things that we need to consider? And are you considering this? And because I hear the same stories over and over and over again, doesn't matter which tools people are actually using. A lot of people love their Excel spreadsheets, and they feel that sort of is the way that they want to do business, or that's the way that they're used to doing business. They trust their own numbers, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's what I want to get into. It's something that I have very strong opinions on and about. So yeah, let's say good morning to everybody. First up here again, Raymond on YouTube. Thank you very much for being here, Raymond. I hope it's going well there in South Broom, and that the world is beautiful where you are. Goalbased, good morning once again. France, time to ignite the F&A world. Now that is a title that I should have used. Thank you very much, Goalbased, and welcome. Nice to have you here. Razan Westhuizen, welcome back, Razan. Nice to have you here again. Thanks for all the time that you spent yesterday talking with me back and forth about an idea that we've sort of come up together with, in a sense. You started it, and so looking forward to see what's going to come from that. But let's see. Neil Strydom, good morning, Neil. Nice to have you back. Hannery, thank you. There was a lekker chat met jou gister. Ek hoop dit jou gehelp. So ja, laat weet my wat gebeur. En maar thanks again for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope you are also taking your husband by the collar and saying, come and sit here with your coffee so that he can watch with you. Alrighty, so Goalbased, this show has become addictive. Cool, I like that. I could be a drug. Cannot wait to wake up for it to start counting the minutes down. Thank you very much, Goalbased. I really appreciate it. Then Jakuruts, my maat hier af in die straat, soos ek altyd sê, welkom. Nice that jy weer hier is. Baie dankie. Same with Malcolm Hendricks. Malcolm, thank you very much. You're here every day. I really appreciate it. See a new face here, George Mkanzi. George, welcome. Thank you very much for being here. Bongi, thank you for coming back. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Nick Dekker, who's it? Nee, ek hoes daarom nie, my maat. Jy weet mos nou, jy het geweet, dit gaan nie antwoord wees. So, nie, ons is daarom nog gezond, maar lekker. Welkom. Nice to have you all here. Then over on LinkedIn, as always, number one, Slanganani, Sunny Bunani, my friend. Welcome. Neil Phillips, once again, thank you very much for being here. Neil, I think you're going to enjoy this particularly. I know you love all this discussion. Jen Mackay, Jen, welcome back. It'll be good to get everybody's input today, by the way. I think that is what I want, is to sort of just gauge where you are and the things that I'm going to say, how you feel about it, and, how are you experiencing things, etc. And so this is one of those sessions where I can really put my foot in it. But also it's one where I can really challenge your thinking and maybe the way that you're doing things. And I feel that is my role. That is what I really want to do, is to bring that to the party, just to sort of say, hey, is what you're still using or what you're doing, the way you're thinking, is that, still the way you should be doing it, or what are we going to do? Frans Hatting, welcome, Frans. Nice of you here. Siba, thank you. You even sent me a WhatsApp to say you will be here this morning when I sent out the notices on WhatsApp. So thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. Stefan Mathieu, welkom. Nice om jy hier so te hê. Hugo Blom, welkom terug, Hugo. Nice to have you. Peter Strydom, welcome back. Thank you very much. Johan Vosloo, my friend in Berlin. Ek ken ook mense oor see nou. Love it how you rock out your own intro music every morning. Thanks. Yeah, I really, I think I did tell the story about how I got to choose that particular music for my podcast. It's actually my podcast's theme song, if you will. But every time I hear it, it just hits my heart. So, I can't help it. The body wants to move, brother. And then Neil, thanks, Neil. Cool beans. So let's get into it, because usually I don't know if you've noticed, but usually I have like 7 points, and I usually discuss around three things around each point. And it usually gets us right to an hour, sometimes 2 or 5 minutes over, sometimes 2 or 5 minutes early. But today there are 9 things, so I'm going to try and get through everything. Otherwise, I'll continue it in a follow-up session. But there's lots to say. But some of the things I'll try and keep short and not belabor the point too much. So with that, let's get into it. Just quickly, please say hi when you arrive. Just say hi to everybody and that you're here. I'm still finding that there's people watching who's not saying hi because they say things to me after the show and then, oh, so you were there. I didn't see you. So yeah, so say hi, please engage, share your opinions, keep it positive and optimistic. Let's keep the head up, chin up, chest out, back straight. There we go. That's how we do it here. Then also, please, if you're over on YouTube, please remember to subscribe if you're getting value. I think we're on 256 now this morning. So thank you very much. It is really, really appreciated that people are subscribing every day. There's at least 1, sometimes 3. The other day, we had 13 people in one day. So it just depends on what's going on. But thank you for that. And then please remember to hit the like button or react to it on LinkedIn. So that people can see that we are busy with some awesome stuff here. So please do that. And then just as I said yesterday, I promised that I'm going to announce my guest for Tuesday. So it's a little bit in advance. I usually do it the day before. But this is a big guest, in my opinion, and I'm very, very grateful for him having agreed to come onto the show. He usually charges, luckily not a kidney and a half a liver, but he does charge, a lot of money to come and speak. He speaks internationally on a lot of stages, and it's because he's got a very interesting life in the sense of the things that he does, the things that he's doing, and he's got a business, he's got a normal business that he's running and things he's doing for corporates, etc. But then he's also speaking, and then he's doing this thing on the side. And this is, I don't know who of you know Ryan Stromrud, but Ryan is going to be on the show. Goalbased, thank you for the introduction to Ryan, and obviously to Ryan for agreeing to be on the show on Tuesday morning. So if you really want to have something, and you see that I called this mind over matter, which I think is such an important thing. We spoke about mindset. We spoke about beliefs. We spoke about planning. We spoke about so many things in the last 30 days. And I think getting somebody like Ryan who come and tell you about his extreme adventure swimming, I want to call them escapades. Maybe that's not the right thing. But he swam between Robben Island and I don't know, somewhere in Cape Town, I think Blouberg, 108 times. They've been to Siberia, Antarctica. He swam in the most horrendous of things. And there's a lot of information and things that he can give you. And it's not going to be a talk from Ryan's side. I'm going to be interviewing him, asking him questions, and do my best to make it applicable to what we do in our world and how we can really work on our mindsets in order to push through anything. So this is definitely something that you shouldn't miss. Don't miss this. Tell everybody that they need to be here Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. sharp, because we don't start a minute late. It may look to you like we're starting a minute late because I start at exactly 8 o'clock, and sometimes there's a bit of a delay before you see it on LinkedIn or before you see it on YouTube. But when it's 8 o'clock, we start the broadcast, and we haven't missed a day since we started. So, be here on Tuesday, guys. We'll be sending this out. I think I'll post it after the show already to make people aware about Tuesday. And thanks again to Ryan for agreeing to do this, and also for Gillian, who I've been communicating with, to get all the images and all the stuff and make sure that everybody's happy. So, thank you very much for all of that. All righty, lekker. Let me just switch off all these things that's moving here on the screen, because I now want to get into this discussion. Let me just very quickly see who's here. Hi, Nick. Thank you, Nick. Then Douglas Kimball. I already said hi to Nick, so that's why I was so quick. Martina, nice to have you back. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope you're going to enjoy the show today. And with that, alrighty, let's start with this whole F&A conundrum and see what people are saying. Good morning, Palesa and Surieta on LinkedIn. Welcome. Alrighty, so my first thing is, when I think about financial planning, and I must be careful to say software, because financial planning software, when most people think about it, they think about that entire system. It's the CRM, the workflows, the compliance, maybe even commission tracking, whatever is part of the system, and then part of it is the F&A, as most people would refer to it. But I just want to be clear, like when I talk about financial planning software, I'm talking about the financial planning tools inside of whatever software system you're using. And whether you're using an all-in-one kind of system or whether you've built your own technology stack with this, it doesn't really matter to me. This is only focused on the technologies that you are using in order to plan. Now, that can be like the AdWorks and the X-Plans and the Elite Wells and the Avalons, etc. Or it could be something particular like my plan. It could be something like maybe you're using some spreadsheets from Alan Gray or from Glacier, that ICE tool of theirs, or you're using integrated wealth planning from Old Mutual, or whatever it is that you're using, there is a tool that you're hopefully using, and maybe your own spreadsheets. But those are the things that I am referring to today when I talk about this. And then when I say there's three things that must come together, and this is critical, all three of them. If one is missing, you're going to struggle. Or apart from maybe not struggling so much because maybe you found a way around it, but the thing is you're not going to get all the value from these planning tools that it could offer you if these three things came together. So what are those three things, Franco? Obviously, that's the question on your mind, hopefully. The first one is that you need to have financial planning knowledge, skills, and expertise. If you think that a financial planning tool is going to do planning for you, and there's some things that I'm going to talk about where I will come back to that point, this is the thing that I see is missing most. Now, I'm not challenging or questioning your level of knowledge. All I'm saying is that there are things that's included in these financial planning tools that maybe you don't tend to focus on, and therefore you are not comfortable with that. So there may be room for you to grow your financial planning knowledge, skills, and abilities. But that is something that you need to work on continuously. Okay, so that is critical. You have to do that. The second thing is that you've got to know that piece of software backwards, forwards, up, down, in, out, whatever way. So you have to spend the time to get to know it well. Now, I've seen this. I was part of the implementation at one of the corporates where they implemented the new system in 2016. And like always, there's a group of people that make it their mission to know everything, and they play with it. They do case studies, they test it, they put in the time. But what do we do most of the time? We don't do that. Okay, we go to the training. It's 2 morning trainings, or it's 2 full day trainings, or you don't even want to go. So now I'll figure it out on my own. But the problem is the moment you go and sit there, you feel like, I need to be doing something else. There's something else that's going to be more valuable. I can do this, or here's a problem. My client phones, most like, my debit order bounced. No, ek nie dekking nie. So there's always something that's going to distract. And obviously it depends on how you've set up your team and the support you've got around you, how much that distraction is going to be. So if you are somebody who does everything yourself, or you only have one assistant and you're still struggling to let go, those things are going to be huge for you. It's going to be a real challenge from that point of view. So that's the second thing. The third thing that is required is the ability or to do client engagement properly, to engage with clients on a level that they understand, on a level that they feel comfortable with, at a level that you really deeply understand their situation and what they're about and what they're trying to achieve, and being able to listen very well. I think that's maybe 90% of the skill is just listening, but then also being able to, and I think part of client engagement would be to interpret what it is that the system has calculated, because ultimately a financial planning tool is just a very intricate calculator. That's what it does. Whatever you put in, it's going to go into the system and there's going to be a result. But that result doesn't necessarily mean something to the client. So that's where the client engagement part comes in. It's so important. And also something that I've seen quite a lot is like when somebody implements a new system, particularly corporates, when they implement a new system, they assume that if you've been around, Goalbased, for example, you've been doing this since 2000, 2001, that they assume that Goalbased will know how to discuss this with the client. They assume that Goalbased is comfortable with using the F&A output. They just assume that because you've been around for so long. And that may be true, that it will be very easy for you to get to the gist of how do I discuss this now with the client? Which of the numbers that's on this output is really important? But people don't take the time to go and do that. So what we tend to do is we run through the report from top to bottom, and then we try and explain that to the client. And that's why I say to really be able to engage with clients, to connect with clients, and to be able to relay the information or then translate the information into a language that they understand. that is critical. So those are the three things. So first off, your financial planning knowledge is non-negotiable. You got to work on it continuously. Secondly, is you got to know the tool that you're using backwards and forwards. And that's why so many people love using their own Excel spreadsheets, because they know where things come from. Whereas it takes a bit of time to get to know the system that you've actually bought and that you're paying for on a monthly basis. And then thirdly, client engagement. So those are the three most important things. All right. Sorry, I'm just checking the comments quickly. So your mission, if you then choose to accept it, and I'm going to run through this very, very quickly, but basically, and I think I've alluded to most of these things, is that you've got to take the time. You've got to set the time apart, even if it's an hour a day for a month. I mean, just look what we were able to accomplish in a month doing this show. When I did the first one, it was an hour. When I did the second one, it was 2 hours, 3 hours. Now we're sitting on after today on 31 hours of content. I mean, I've given you like a whole year's worth of content in a month. So when you do a little bit every single day, it adds up so quickly, and you get to results that you didn't think was possible. So you've got to be patient, but you've got to put in a certain amount of time consistently. So just an hour, just spend an hour, take an aspect of a tool and just focus on that today. So that you need to do. So get 100% comfortable with the tool. That's my second point. And then you must be able to use this tool in front of clients. Okay. And this doesn't mean that as they give you the information, you're typing into. So I'm going to come back to it later on, but you've got to be so comfortable to do tweaks to the plan and to change things and to be able to facilitate the discussion when you sort of make these changes. And different people will have different views about this. But bear with me. At the end, I'm going to share with you why I'm saying that this is critical, and this is really where you're going to unlock a lot of value as well. All right, let me quickly check here on if there's anything additional. Jacques Beckett, goeiemôre Jacques. Nice om jou te sien hierso. Ons het mekaar ontmoet daar by Stratum verlede jaar. Spukazi, good morning Spukazi, welcome back. And you were here yesterday as well. Thank you very much for being back. Drew Hudson, good morning Drew. It's the first time I've seen you here. Good morning. Ease of business, top of mind. Yes, Marius van der Merwe, thank you for being here. It's been a long time, my friend. I think the last time we saw each other was when we both still worked for the Flame. So that's a long time ago. But nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us. All right, so then number 3. Now, this is where this discussion gets really interesting, because a lot of people feel like, clients, and you can talk to different systems providers, and I do that. I interview them on my podcast. I work with them. I deal with advisors that's got these different systems. Advisors are phoning me to say, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And often, it's just like, and it's 100% true and it's 100% correct, where the client only wants the high level details. It's true. I'm not even going to debate that. There are 1 or 2 or 3 other clients of yours that wants detail, and those are usually the people you actually didn't want to work with in the first place, but they are very detailed orientated. And unless you're very detailed orientated, that usually is a bit of a frustration for a lot of people. But when we look at high level versus the detail, there are tools that will just give you that one picture, one view, and it's beautiful and it works very well. Okay. But my question then becomes is like, if we go, high level detail, and just before I get to that, I mean, it is up to the client at the end of the day, whether they want high level detail or they want detail. Okay. But as I said, most of them would want high level. Talk to me in a language that's plain that I can understand. Don't talk CFP speak or advanced postgrad speak or fiduciary speak or investment speak or anything like that. Just talk to me like somebody at a braai, please, so that I can understand and follow what it is that you're saying. It's important that I think when we look at high level versus detail before that, and I'll get to what I wanted to say in a second, but if you want to decide about, or rather, when you decide between high level and detail, you've got to make a distinction. You've got to distinguish between the need for detail when you do financial planning and the preferences of the client, because there's a massive difference between those two. So in my opinion, you need detail. If you want to do proper financial planning and you want to know where you can do things and what you can do to help clients, you need detail. You and I don't do financial planning anymore, but you need detail. you're not going to get away from it. You cannot do high-level planning for a client because you're going to miss out on things that you should be focusing on and things that you got to know and things that you got to plan and prepare for. So you cannot ignore the detail. You cannot, as a financial planner, you absolutely cannot do that. Oh, Superman has arrived. Thank you very much. Thank you. So cheers. There's my drink. I hope you're having a good one as well. But that's it. Okay, so distinguish between the need for detail when doing financial planning and the preferences of the client of how they wanted to relay that information to them. There is a massive difference between the two. In my opinion, as I said, you need detail when you do financial planning. My question becomes is like, if you look at these different tools, some tools are high-level client engagement orientated, okay? And they're great. They are fantastic for that. They do a fantastic job. Even if you're using a detailed orientated system that can do everything that opens and closes, you can still decide to have output that is more geared towards the client. And sometimes you've got to do that manually, but you can still do that. My question is, when it comes to high level versus detail, from a tool perspective, as I said, some tools just give you the high level picture. Others have got detail, which you can choose what you want to show. But does that mean that we need to ignore certain things? Does that mean that we don't take certain things into account because this is high level planning, you know? So we got to distinguish between the planning and the output. Definitely a huge difference between those two. I don't know. What do you think? Give me your ideas. Komoto, good morning. Nick says, I had to learn to share only high level, but be able to share detail on request. Nick, I think I've struggled with the same thing. And it's the hardest thing if you know all the stuff behind the scenes to only give the client what they actually need and actually want. So I started to think about it in the sense of, like, when you've got a report has got many pages and a lot of detail, but there's always an executive summary. Any research report, you'll find an executive summary. And usually the client is happy with the executive summary. If you tell them, listen, you need this or you need that, how you got to that is there's not many of them that's going to ask you how you got to that. However, I've always said that if there was ever a query or there was ever an issue, then you should be able to prove how you got to that. That's it. Then it's a compliance issue or an ombudsman issue or whatever the case is. But you don't have to prove that I showed the client my calculation methods and how it works and everything that I took into account. That is my doing my job with due care, skill, and diligence, and from a fiduciary point of view anyway. So it's how I act, it's what I consider, it's what I know, it's what I apply. That is what I must prove in the event of a let's say, a complaint. All right. But I agree with you there, Nick. Is definitely that is the hardest thing to get there, because I know you're also very detailed orientated. You know your financial planning very, very well. And then to relay only the important stuff to clients, it's really something you got to, that's where the client engagement part comes in. Good morning, Russell. Russell says, yes, fully agree. Your first and foremost job when engaging with clients is to explain everything in simple form. Yes, but it's a skill, Russell, as Nick was saying. It's not something that you get up and I think there are people that's very good at that, but most people need to learn that, and it's important for us to remember. All right, that's awesome. Let me quickly see. Goalbased says, Franco, agree on taking the time to appreciate your F&A tool functions. Ongoing refreshers is critical. Yes, it is about confidence and unlocking real value for all parties. Peter says, we built our own system and our primary goal was to develop a tool that did not compromise on the integrity of the planning, but was also understandable to the client. This was really challenging, but we have managed to achieve the delicate balance between sophistication and understandability. Yeah, it's like an iPhone, right? What's going on inside is crazy, but the way we use it is very simple. So yeah, cool beans. All right. So on that note, I want to move on to my next point, which is goal-based versus cash flow-based planning. And this is also, if you see that I spoke about high level versus detail, then goal-based and cash flow-based sort of is now the next natural sort of question to ask, or the next points to consider in my mind. Because, I think goal-based is the most popular sort of approach. It's what we are being taught when we do our postgrad or NQF 6 or NQF 7, NQF 5 even, but your calculations happens more in 6 and onwards. So you're taught discounted cash flow and those kind of things. So what goal-based financial planning is, it is focused, as the name says, on a very specific goal. So it works very well for that. It also works very well for young people who's got a long time horizon. Anybody that you're planning for, nothing to do with your age, but if you've got a long planning term, and I would say long planning term is possibly, I don't know, for me it's 10 years and longer, but at least 5 years and longer. Goal-based will be great. So if you want to save for a holiday or education or, even the retirement when you're a long way off, goal-based is a great way to do that because it takes a very wide approach. Now, I always use this example, like if you want to go from, and I'm sorry if you've heard this before, but if you want to go from Johannesburg to Cape Town, when you do goal-based financial planning, you look at the map and you say, there's Joburg. I must get this the right way around. So here's Joburg, here is Cape Town. Boom, there's a straight line. I go like the crow flies. And that's goal-based financial planning. It's just like, I want to get there. I've got to go southwest, is that, from Joburg? Not too much, just like in that direction, and all you'll do is, as you go along, is, am I still on the way to Cape Town at least? But there's no detail. There's no like, what's happening on the road to Bloemfontein or what's happening. It's like straight. Okay, it's just I want to get there. We didn't really, in a way you would have considered the kind of vehicle you'll use to get there. But that's really goal-based financial planning. So it's very wide. It maybe doesn't take a lot of detail and things into account. It usually has a straight line method kind of thing that it looks at. In other words, it will assume that, listen, it is 2,000 kilometers to Cape Town. If I travel this much every single day, if I had to walk, then I'll get there by that time, sort of thing. And how fast do you need to walk, etc.? Or do you rather use this kind of vehicle or that kind of vehicle, and that'll get you there sooner because maybe the need is to be there sooner. So those are the kind of things that's great. And you can always check in goal-based, but it's like a wide sort of range of things that can happen. And you can still navigate to at least just stay in your lane. Okay. But there's no turning off, no nothing. We're not making changes. We're not changing vehicles in between or anything like that. You're just checking that you're still moving in the direction of Cape Town. And usually with goal-based planning, you'll get to Cape Town somewhere. It may not be in the exact suburb where you want it to be, but it could be close. Cashflow-based financial planning, on the other hand, will consider the details. So it's a lot more complex. There's a lot more things that you would consider from that point of view. So this is really suited to particular circumstances. And you'll see that even with goal-based planning, it's sort of where you are and what you're planning for, I think, has the biggest impact on your choice. It's not about what you prefer. It is about what is appropriate for the circumstances of which approach you should be following. So if you look at cash flow-based planning, I believe when you're like within 5 years or close or at retirement or even in retirement, then cash flow-based is the only way to go. A lot of people doing lifestyle financial planning would typically only focus on cash flow-based planning. And here's the thing. So let's just say that if I'm doing cash flow-based, goal-based planning, right? And I do like a retirement plan for someone, and it says like, these are all the things you want to do, blah, blah, blah. You need so much money. This is what you have. This is the shortfall. So now you need to be saving this much money. Okay, that's fantastic. That was easy. And then I look at the budget and I see they can't afford it. The one thing that cash flow based, or that goal-based planning cannot show me is that in 3 years or 5 years' time, Susie is going to pay off her car. And then there's going to be more money available. Okay, so I'm going to have to wait until we get there, redo the plan, and then see now what can we do. So she's not going to do anything right now, possibly, because it shows there's no money to do it. But if you do cash flow based planning, I can bring it in to say, oh, in that year, there's suddenly more disposable income becoming available. And we can then start to apply it. And what does that look like? So there's more detail in the way that you look down the line and when things are happening. It's easier to tell a client, listen, although this is the case, don't worry, you're going to do that. And this is what I'm saying, that you need the detail in order to know how to navigate the plan, how to navigate the emotions and the thoughts and the feelings and everything for a client, because they feel like, oh, I'm doomed anyway. I'm just screwed. Let me just live my life. No, this is where you are is perfectly natural. What you're going to do, boom, boom, boom. In 2 years' time, there's going to be more money. Then we start doing it and see if we do that, you will still be okay. That kind of discussions. But as I said, in most cases, when there's a long-term planning, people will focus on goal-based planning. But this is some of the benefits that cash flow-based planning has got over and above goal-based planning. Yeah, so I don't know which one you maybe prefer. You can tell me in the chat in the comments. And so, what do you prefer? Do you prefer goal-based? Do you prefer cash flow-based planning? And we'll get to the tools around that in a second. I just think that for me, each one has its place. And then the next question I want to ask is, does the system that you're using, does that actually offer both, so that you can switch between the two, or are you using different tools for different methods? And are you comfortable with what it is doing? So I'm not even talking about due diligence today. How do you, before you decide on a system, that's maybe also something we can talk about, the process to go through if you want to decide on a particular system. Nick says, ideal is to marry goal and cash flow based. Use cash flow as a test to measure if client is on their path to their goal. If not, advise on adjustments required. Yes, I agree with you. It's great if you can use them in tandem. I think there's a few things that would play a role. It's also the one thing that we mustn't forget is the kind of information that the client makes available to us, because we don't really have control. We can probe and we can ask and we can, if they don't want to give it to us, are you just going to say then I can't help you? Or are you going to work with what you've got and start a relationship and get it going, and over time, adjust that plan and get more detail and work on it? Because that's how many relationships work. You first need to earn their trust if it's a new client. They're not going to just offer all their millions and millions of things that they've got unless they know you, because they've maybe been burned before, or maybe they've had a bad experience, or maybe it's the first time ever that they've dealt with a financial plan. They always thought that they could do it on their own. So there's lots to consider in this. So it's not only looking at the systems and all of that. It's also the human part. We must definitely not forget that. All right. So data integrity is another thing I want to talk about, because I think this is where a lot of things go haywire, and this is where we're missing the boat. We don't take time, and I had a discussion with someone last week, and we are going to do a series on this particularly, where we're going to talk about data and data integrity and things like that, and the importance of that, because everybody's talking about everything else, the apps and the technology and the tools and everything that you're using. But we want to talk about this, and I'm not going to allude to it too much at the moment, so we will definitely finalize it this coming week. And it may be a 1 episode, 2, 3 episode, I don't know, it depends on how much we've got to talk about, but it won't be in a row. It will be once a week if we talk about that. Or if it's just 1 episode, it is just 1 episode. It doesn't really matter. But we are gonna look more into data integrity and the importance of data and the benefits of building your business on top of a solid data foundation. That kind of stuff, without getting technical or losing you in the process. It's just going to be more based on the principles, why it's important, what are we seeing in practice, where's the opportunity, how much you think about it, how can you approach it. How can you fix if it's, if your data isn't in the perfect place? How can you fix that? Strategies and tips and things around that. So we're really going to talk about a lot in that sense. So I'll let you know once that starts to happen. But if I think about data, you've also obviously got the real current data that sits in your CRM or in your client database. And that is the information that you want to make sure is 100% correct. It is 100% updated, because you can use it for so many things. Obviously, it forms the foundation of your financial plan. And if that data isn't correct, doesn't matter how fantastic your tool is, it's not going to work. Now, in my opinion, I know everything is based on assumptions, right? But it doesn't matter to me, because for whatever given set of assumptions you're using, and unfortunately I don't have time to talk about assumptions today, but we're going to talk about that in that series as well. For that set of assumptions, everything must be correct and detailed, and it must be there so that you know exactly which levers you can pull if you need to make adjustments. Okay. But then, what happens when I start using this data? Are you then compromising that data in the sense of, when I do financial planning and I want to create scenarios and I want to do this and this and this, is those things that I'm doing there changing the actual data in my database? And I got to remember to go back and change it. For example, let's just say that a client has got a policy, or let's say you've done something and you want to add a fictitious policy there to show that if you implemented this policy, everything will be okay. Then you could add it in the plan. but it doesn't add it to the client database? Or do you go to the client database and add it to the portfolio so that it sits there and now suddenly you forget to remove it? Next time you print the portfolio, you're looking at like, where does this policy come from? I don't know. So it's very important that you look at when I talk about data integrity, that you look at it from a point of view where is my main data secure? Is my main data safe? Is my main data, is it solid? Is it not changed when I do financial planning? So is the integrity of that data there, and does it remain there even when I start playing around with different scenarios and doing different kind of things in the planning area? So those are very important. And then remember the mini series that we are going to talk about. Good morning, Arun. Welcome. Bongi says, I use at work, which is a complex system. How are other participants finding it? It's interesting. Yeah, so you are welcome to give your opinion there. When is your retirement planning course, Francois? I will let you know, Bongi. I don't know yet. It's not on the cards for right now. There is an online course available if you want to check that out, but not right now in terms of refreshers or live or anything like that. All right, so then this is a big one for me, and this is where a lot of people, I think, are putting themselves in, or I don't know, not in harm's way, but you are definitely opening yourself up. You're increasing the risk, advice risk in your business. You're increasing the advice risk for your client, for yourself, and opening yourself up to issues. And that is this question about to tax or not. Okay, so do we tax or don't we tax? In other words, some systems will calculate tax, okay, on income, on investment growth, on capital gains. It will calculate it on lump sum tax. It will even take into account, when there are multiple lump sums, if you plan to stagger retirement, but every time you take a lump sum, it will actually aggregate the lump sum tax. And you can let me know what I was battling between, am I going to do lump sum tax today or am I going to talk about F&A system? So you must let me know if you want me to talk about technical things as well, about how lump sum tax works and all of the different things, etc. I will do that. But from that point of view, you've got systems that will do all of that. Then on the other hand, you have systems that you need to go calculate that lump sum tax and then put it in as a manual need, for example. So you've got like on the one extreme, the one thing, and on the other extreme, the other thing, and then obviously variations in between. But when you do that lump sum tax, even where systems calculate it, if you say, I want to take 500,000, it may assume that that is the only lump sum you're taking, even if there is a subsequent lump sum. It may not use the aggregation method correctly. And here's the thing. Now this is why I want to come back to your financial planning knowledge. If you don't know how the aggregation principle works for lump sum tax and how the tables work and what needs to be used, etc., then you're just going to think that the system is correct because they've built it into the system. And this is one of those things where you don't know. Okay, if you don't have the knowledge, you can't challenge the way that the system is handling this. You won't know that I need to put it in as a separate need. You don't know that I should do something manually and then add it, or to at least double check the calculation to see whether it is correct. So this is my point about your financial planning knowledge is non-negotiable. It is critical. The system cannot do that for you. It is simply calculating what you're putting in, but you need context about how to put it into the system. And sorry, you can hear that I'm very, very passionate about that. And I think what I also see a lot of people do is they switch off CGT. Why? Because I don't have the information. The client doesn't know. They don't know what they've, what they paid for the house back in 1990. And then I'm not even talking about, okay, so now what are the methods for the base cost? Because remember, and we also had this discussion in the week where, in 2004, 2007, 2008, even up until 2010, I would say, CGT wasn't that big of a deal because there wasn't much time that elapsed between it being implemented and it actually they're now becoming an issue. But now we're talking about 20 years ago. 19 years ago is when, if you want to be technical, 18 and a half years ago is when CGT came into effect. Now, things can move along, if you now, in 20 years, surely, how compounding works. There's a big difference between what the value was in October 2001 and what it is today. So you cannot ignore it anymore. It may not have been such significant impact, but I'm telling you now that CGT is a bigger issue than estate duty, donations tax, any of those things, even income tax on death, etc., or on divorce, or any of those kind of things. you have to incorporate CGT, and all the systems can do that. Okay, some of them much better than others, but you cannot switch off disregard CGT. You cannot. What you do is, if you don't have the information, you will obviously have market value because everybody knows what something is worth. But then if they don't give you a base cost, simple, use 0 as a base cost. And then you just make a note to say that, and base cost was not available. We assume the base cost of 0. Don't make the mistake of always using the 20%. Okay, I'm not going to get into CGT. So anyway, so that's one of the things in terms of that. Income tax. Okay, so not most, but some of the systems use income tax, is that they would look at, let's say you put in an amount that is pre-tax, then they would calculate the tax on that amount. But does it aggregate all the income amounts that you've got in that system? Does it take into account if you earned interest or dividends or things like that, that there wouldn't be tax on it? So it depends on that level of detail. And again, for me, from a financial planning point of view, that is critical. You cannot disregard those details. Doesn't matter to the client. Do I need to show them that you're using your 34.5 or your 23,800 or that your dividends are tax-free? No, it doesn't matter to them. But I don't know how to change things unless I know those details. And often, you have to, when you put things into the system, you've got to decide, is this now pre-tax, is this post-tax? What does that mean? My other big issue is that some of these systems will ask you for a what do you call it, a tax rate to use. So it doesn't calculate the tax. It asks you what tax rate. And what do? We go like, what is the income of the client? Oh, it's 1.2 million. Or let's call it, it's 1.5 million, or it's a little bit more now. Let's say 2 million for the year. Okay, so that means, he's a 45% tax bracket. So let's put 45% into the assumptions, and then every rand get taxed at 45% from rand 1. That's not how our tax works. Our tax, the first 80,000 is not taxed. From there up until 190 or something is taxed at 18%, and then 26, and then the next bit at 31 and 36 and 39 and 41 and 45. Only the amount that 500,000 above the 1.5 or above 1.6 or something is taxed at 45%. So the effective rate is not 45%. So the problem with putting in the marginal tax rate is that now it's completely overstating the shortfall. And that's not the issue. Nobody has ever complained about having too much money, but here's my issue. If that is for risk planning, we are putting too much money into risk. That money should have gone to retirement planning or paying off the bond or doing things like that. That is where the money should have been going. But because we didn't use the right assumptions, we overstated what they needed. And the same, if we don't include tax at all, we are completely understating what is needed. So again, our job is to make sure that there's sufficient risk cover in place. Not too much, not too little. Okay. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself now. So I think I've spoken about all of that. Then one last thing, and this may be different for different people, and we can have a lot of debate around this. I can go for a day on this topic alone, I think. But if you think about estate planning, and you want to look at estate duty and whatever is happening there, it doesn't matter how they're married or anything. But what you typically want to do is, when you're planning, you're hopefully planning for the husband and the wife, and you would want to look at what is the situation when the husband dies first. Then obviously you want to look at what happens if the wife dies first. Simultaneous death, I think, and we had this discussion in the week as well, I don't think simultaneous death is that big of a thing because it doesn't happen very often. And even if you plan for the first one, there should always be enough in terms of what is needed anyway. So you don't need to worry about that. But what I would like to do is to be able to sort of forecast, let's say, so the surviving spouse, whether it's the husband or the wife, but the surviving spouse, okay, from both. So if I'm planning for the husband to die first, I want to look at the surviving spouse and say, what if she dies 10 years later or 15 years later or 20 years later? What does that look like? So I want to be able to project that estate forward based on what it is right now and just say, this is what it might look like, when you die 5 years or 10, depending on the age, so many years later. Now, as far as I know, there's only one tool that does that at the moment, but that is something that I would really like to sort of at least have the choice whether I want to use it or not. And I don't know how you feel about it and to what level of detail you go, but at least you can do first death and then first death from the other side. So that is critical, but you want to be able to do it from one set of data to look at what what that looks like. So those are some of the things around to tax or not to tax, in my opinion. Nick is saying, future tax, especially long-term, how accurate do you want to guess? So, yeah, it doesn't really matter. If you do everything in present value terms, it doesn't matter. The fact is that you can't disregard it, because if you say, well, here's an amount that I want, this is how much money I need, you need to understand. So I usually do my tax calculations all in present value terms. So all the planning happens in present value terms. I don't work in future values because we don't know what it's going to be. Some of the tools will actually increase the tables for tax with CPI, etc. But I would just want to bring everything back to present value, and I tax that according to today's tax tables. And at least as we go along and you review, you can adjust that. But what you cannot do is ignore. If you think you're going to get, I'm going to get to that in a point in a second. That's also going to drive this point home about that if we disregard tax completely, what's going to happen in future. So Nick says, personally, I feel use a calculated guess and declare your assumptions based on information available today. We don't even know the tax impact of COVID-19 in a year's time. That's true. So yeah, I think I've said enough around this whole tax issue. The one thing that my standpoint is, you cannot ignore it. You got to do something that's reasonable and include it in your planning, is my view. I'm keen to hear how you feel about that. Cool. So let me just see quickly here on what's happening over here. Jen says, could not agree more on the data issue. First hurdle, data integrity, the advisor has control over. Second trap, aggregation and distribution of data beyond the advisor's control. Yes. Shlanganani, our systems built to cater for different scenarios. Yes. It is, Shlanganani. So you could create various different scenarios, about taking, so you can have a base scenario. So this is sort of saying where the client is today. And then you can easily from there play around to say, well, if we do this, that's what it would look like. If we do this, that's what it would look like. And so most systems do offer that in that sense. All right. So let's see. Beautiful. All right. I like the engagement. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you, Nikki. All right. So next point up, the impact of solution choices. And this is quite important. And this now ties in with quite a lot of things. Okay, this ties back to high level versus detail. This ties in with financial planning knowledge levels and abilities and skills and things like that. So I don't know the way that we were taught. I mean, if you think about when you do retirement planning and we want to say, well, you're going to retire at 65. You want 10,000 Rand a month. That escalates at inflation. We think we're going to get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% growth. Doesn't matter. But then to do that, we do a discounted cash flow calculation in order to show what is going to need. And that discounted cash flow calculation is based on exhaustion. Okay. And even if you work on preservation, it would still have the same issue that I want to share with you here. And this is something that I realized about 2-3 years ago. Working with different systems, I realized that there's certain things that they're not taking into account. And again, this is one of the things about goal-based versus cash flow-based planning as well, because cash flow-based planning would almost naturally include what I'm about to share with you, whereas goal-based just wouldn't. And there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to this. So I don't want to get into too much detail about it. But here's the question. So if I calculated, for instance, that somebody needs a certain amount of money, let's say for 25 years. This is my inflation assumption. This is my investment growth assumption. And then using normal discounted cash flow calculations, it would then mean that how much capital does this person need at 65 to give them this income that will increase annually with inflation if they can get 10% per annum, let's say. But in that last year, after 25 years, the capital is going to be depleted because it works on exhaustion. So it goes on that basis. And the only investment that can work in that manner is a discretionary investment. So whether it's an endowment or unit trust or anything, it's only a discretionary investment that you can draw down to zero in the last year that you're planning for. So from that point, obviously, we're trying to plan beyond. Even if the client says, "Oh, I don't think I'm going to get older than 85 or 90, whatever," you always want to try and put in more years than that. But now what happens is when they get to retirement, and also we use the same calculation, whether this person is going to invest their money into unit trust, whether they're going to invest it into an endowment or into a retirement annuity or their pension fund, we use the same calculation. Okay. So let's just consider this quickly. What happens when I get to retirement? When I get to retirement, I need to make a choice. If the money went into a retirement annuity, then I can either choose a life annuity or I can choose a living annuity, or I can combine the two. That's my option. Okay. There's nothing else I can do. And both of those annuities, let's just forget for a second that you get escalating and inflation linked and with profit and all these wonderful annuities, and you've got joint annuitants and all that. Let's just focus on a life annuity, a living annuity, and let's say just a normal unit trust. Okay. When you choose that solution, in most cases, and it's true, we don't know what's going to happen if it's 30 years from now. Am I going to choose that or whatever? But you've got to choose something now to be able to do the planning. So if you're going to choose a living annuity, okay, there's a few things that you need to choose. So obviously we still have inflation for the need, that the need needs to escalate with inflation. But then we've got an investment component, and we've also got a fee component that we need to consider. And then we've got the level of income that we need to choose for that living annuity. Now, your needs are driven by what you're going to spend, and what you're going to spend is going to be after-tax money, right? So whatever you get, you want to be able to pay for those expenses with that income after you've paid tax. So income that pays from a living annuity or a life annuity is fully taxable. So you need to include tax there. So that's important, because the income you're going to get, you can't say, well, I need 30,000 Rand a month, so I want to draw 30,000 Rand a month from my living annuity. No, you can't do that. You're going to have to draw 35 or 40,000, whatever that amount is, because you're first going to pay tax, and therefore. So now it also means that I need to have a higher drawdown to be able to do that. But let's just say I don't play around with the drawdown, and I say I want 4%, because I believe that 4% is very sustainable long term. If somebody's going to retire at 60 or 55 or so on, then it means that if I need to generate that amount of income after tax that will cover my expenses, I'm going to need a hell of a lot more capital in that living annuity, okay, to start off with. And people don't think about that. If I use the normal discounted cash flow, I would give the exact same shortfall for unit trust, for retirement annuity, for whatever I'm choosing, because it doesn't consider the product that you're going to implement. Now I can obviously increase the drawdowns. The higher you make the drawdown, the less capital you're going to need initially, but it may mean that you're going to run out sooner. So there is a level of balance there, but let me not get too technical. Let me just jump forward to the last year, okay? When I get to the last year, let's just say, for example, I need 300,000 Rand in that last year of income, okay, that I need. If I have a unit trust or an endowment, that income is tax-free, right? There may be a little bit of CGT on the disinvestment on the unit trust, but let's just say there's no income tax payable on that. So that means if I need 300,000 in year number last, I need 300,000 capital in my investment at the beginning of that last year, right? So if I needed that, I needed a certain amount to start off with, okay? On a living annuity, the maximum I can draw is 17.5%. So now if I say, well, I need 300,000, at 17.5%, that means in that last year, I need 1.8 million Rand. So that for me means that I needed to start off with a hell of a lot more if I needed to end up with 1.8 versus ending up with 300,000. So those are the kind of things that a lot of tools are not considering the impact of that. And I'm saying that you need to go check your system, whether they do or they don't. You need to understand the impact around that. So I'm not going to go deeper into this. I mean, I can do a whole session just on that and show you and share that with you and how you can go about it. I mean, life annuities is different because a life annuity works on a certain annuity rate. And if you've got escalation, that rate will be lower. If you have level, it will be higher. But you need a certain amount in year one to generate that income. And after that, we just worry about the income. There's no capital we need to worry about. So the annuity rates, the drawdown rates, all of those things, the fees, all of it will impact about how much money one would need in that first year. So you cannot ignore the choice of that long term of you know what you do and what you usually propose to people. You need to plan towards that. All right. Sure, that was something that gets me very, very excited. Shahida says it's a great session. Thank you very much, Shahida. I hope you don't feel like I'm shouting at you because that's not the intention. I just get very, very excited. All right, then I want to get to the next point about integrated planning. Now, this is where, again, now I said earlier that I want to get back to like, why is it important to be able to use this tool in front of clients? And it's got nothing to do with you sitting there, capturing the information as they're giving it to you and then do the plan and close them and do all of that. No, it's not about that. This is about sort of being able to sit with the client once the planning has been done. And now you have that client engagement. You have that conversation. And you can tell them, listen, the way things are going, what you're doing now, it's not sufficient. So we've got a problem. You also don't have maybe enough money for this, or you don't do that or whatever. So maybe you haven't saved in. Let's say that the issue is that you haven't saved enough for retirement. What are the different things that we can do? Well, we can postpone your retirement so you can work more, or you can have an additional job. You can do loads of different things. You can decide to sort of make sure, depending on how far they are from retirement, maybe some of their debt would have carried into retirement. Maybe you can look at what does it look like if they want to pay it off earlier. Can they do that? What will be the long-term impact on that? What if they take a little bit more risk? What if they take less risk in their investments pre and post-retirement? What does that look like? So you want to be able to really adjust, the plan and live there in front of them so that they can see what's going to happen. So that's planning. That's coming up with, if you do this, just look at the benefit for that and what does it buy you basically in the long run. But you've got to be so comfortable to do that, and you got to know where's what. And if you like, I don't know if you find this as well. If you've been using a tool for a long time, you very quickly realize like, if something doesn't look right, I need to go and change this, or I know exactly where the problem is. But you can only do that if you know the system very, very well. So particularly if you are an office-based practice, that is perfect. I've been to a few office-based practices, and they've got this big screen, and they are very comfortable with the tools that they're using. And they show the client in real time, if we do this, that's what it's going to look like. If we do this, that is what it's going to look like. What do most other people do? No, they print out packs and packs and packs of paper, go to the client, then the client wants to change one thing, and then they go like, okay, crap, I'll have to come back to you. You don't want to do that, okay? And this is also a nice way of getting them engaged. And you also now need to think about, in a virtual environment, how do I facilitate this conversation, and how do I share this information with them? How can we say, but if they say, but what if we pay 1,000 Rand extra on our home loan? What's going to happen? You must be able to do it like that and show them as part of your planning. So does your tool facilitate these kind of conversations? Does it do that? Even your Excels and things that you've built, does it really help in that sense? So are you able to change parameters and assumptions and things on the fly right there and then, But again, without impacting your real information, your base information, that needs to stay there. But if you start playing around with it, how easily can you do that? All righty. Let me just hop on over to LinkedIn. Let me just see. What tool would you suggest? That depends on you and your needs, Zeti, and your clients, the kind of planning that you do and what you focus on. There are certain tools that are more aimed towards investments. There are certain tools who are more aimed towards risk. There are certain tools that are more general. There are tools that are more aimed at cash flow. There's tools that are more aimed at goal-based. So it's not an easy answer. There isn't one answer for that. So let me just run through. Boom, boom, boom. I see there's some nice conversations happening. Johan Foster asked, would you guys be able to do real-time interactive planning with the client? As one who was the client recently, I really enjoyed having an interactive what-if style of planning. Thanks, Johan. I didn't see your comment before I went into that, but that is very, very very important. What's also very interesting to me is to see how different people are experiencing the same tool. But it's like anything in South Africa or the world, I guess, is that you would be very pro what it is you use, or maybe you're not, and it may be a few things. It may be because you don't know the tool well enough to know, because one of the things that if you know these tools very well, there are workarounds for everything. You can really do anything in that tool that you want if you just know it. If you just know it well enough. There's just that there may be some manual work involved to do it, but you can get anything into the system, even if you think that they're not asking for certain things or they should be. There's a way to get it in there. I can promise you that. It may just be a little bit more effort with some tools than it is with others. But yeah, it is a thing of, somebody will believe absolutely in something like at work. The next person will say, nope, it's not good enough. One person will absolutely love X-Plan. The next person says, no, they're crazy. It's just not working for me. The same with Elite and Avalon and I don't know what else there is out there, the asset maps of the world, etc. So those are the kind of things that you need to consider, and there isn't one answer for that. All right, so some final thoughts from my side is, I just want to ask you a few questions. The first thing is your financial planning tool a compliance tool only? So it's something that I laugh, there's a few people that will tell me, I do the deal and then I make the F&A fit the deal because I don't know these tools and what. So it's more of a compliance tool, the way that you use it, or is it a business tool? So that's the thing. This needs to be a business tool. Are you paying that monthly fee to the service provider with, I need to pay them again, or is it an investment? Because I'm telling you today, it is an investment. You've got to make a distinction between that this tool is not appropriate for my needs and I don't have the ability to use it to the level that I'm supposed to do. And that's why I'm challenging you on that. You need to go and find out those answers for yourself. But that's important. What about the output? I didn't even get to the reporting and the outputs and all of that. So what about the output? How does that look? Do I need to reformat it in a way to get out the most important things and present like an executive summary to the client, or a picture-based report to the client, or whatever? So what about that? And then there's a big question, like I see there's some people asking what would I suggest? What would people in the audience suggest? And for me, it's not a question of that. It comes now down to, is one system better than another? I don't think better is the right word. It may be more suitable for a particular client, or if you build, because you tend to build a client base, with certain types of clients that you prefer to work with. So is the tool you're using appropriate for that? But also, do you know this tool that you've got so well that you can say that? Because if you don't have the right knowledge and you don't have the right sort of experience with the tool, any tool that you're going to get, you're going to feel it's too complex. When anybody says to me, this tool is too complex, and I go like, no. Okay, I'm using all of them. They are not complex. They are not complex. Okay. Yes, you got to learn about user interface and where do I click for this, and that I need to click the save button. It doesn't save automatically. And there's things like that you need to learn that is unique to each system. But financial planning is financial planning. That's the primary thing that you need to make sure that you are comfortable there. Also, should you switch? No, I don't think you should be switching. I think you should get to know what you're using extremely well and master it. Once you've done that, then you can decide whether you want to switch, because then you know your reasons for switching. Because I can promise you today, you're going to switch and you're going to have the same issues when you switch to another system. Even if you build your own Excel, there's always going to be something that's not in there. So just, get to know your system that you're using very, very well. Make sure that the people that's supporting in your office knows it backwards and forwards, and that you become masters at the system, because it's such a valuable tool. You can unlock so much business if you do it right. But those three things needs to come together that I started with. And then I guess, should you be using multiple tools? Often, yes, I used multiple tools. I have my main tool for most of the things, and then there were certain things that just couldn't be done by them, and I would have my own tool. And that's where the tax tool came from. I built the tax tool, I designed it, and I use that for that kind of stuff. And then there are other things where I use maybe my plan sometimes for cash flow planning on the investment side, and we've got some Excel things that I've built, because there are certain clients which just doesn't fit exactly in there. So you could be using multiple tools, but you need to be clever about that. Don't use multiple tools for the sake of using multiple tools. Cool stuff. Thank you very much, guys, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I see there's a lot of chatting happening over on LinkedIn. So thank you very much for joining me on this Sunday. I really appreciate it. Tomorrow I'll be back, and we've got some interesting things I want to talk about. Keep an eye on LinkedIn and on my WhatsApp status and things like that. I will share that with you as we go along. And yeah, as I said, have a good weekend. Enjoy it with the family. I will see you back tomorrow morning. Bring your coffee and let's chat some more. Thank you very much.